As the first light of dawn painted the sky in soft hues of pink and orange, I lay awake, watching the gentle rise and fall of Mark's chest as he slept. Our modest one-bedroom apartment, once a haven of love and dreams, now felt like a cage of pretenses and unspoken truths. Today was the day that had loomed over us like a dark cloud for months. Today, Mark would divorce me. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the city waking up outside our window. I could hear the distant sounds of cars and the occasional early bird, their noises a stark contrast to the quiet storm brewing within the confines of our home. Today's the day, isn't it? Mark's groggy voice broke the silence as he stirred awake, his eyes meeting mine with a complexity of emotions I couldn't decipher. Yes, I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Today's the day. The past few years with Mark had been a roller coaster of highs and lows. When we first met, I was fresh out of college, full of ideals and dreams. Mark, with his ambitions and drive, seemed like the perfect counterpart to my spirited independence. We fell in love, or so I thought. I always believed it wasn't just about love, it's about securing our future, Mark said one evening, as we discussed our plans over a modest dinner. His words echoed in my mind, a painful reminder of the divergence in our paths. But isn't love part of that security? I had countered, trying to find a common ground. For some, maybe. But I've seen too much to believe that love is enough, he replied, his gaze distant, as if he were speaking from a place of deep-seated fears and convictions. That conversation was the first crack in the idyllic image I had painted of our life together. Over time, Mark's obsession with wealth and status grew, overshadowing the simple joys we once shared. Our Sunday morning walks, the pancakes I'd make, the laughter that filled our apartment, all faded into the background as Mark's gaze fixed on a horizon I couldn't see. His pursuit of wealth became all-consuming when he began to view our marriage not as a partnership of equals, but as a stepping stone to a future he had meticulously planned. A future, as it turned out, that no longer included me. The woman I've met, she's the daughter of one of the wealthiest men in the city. This is the opportunity I've been waiting for, Lena. I've secured my future, he declared one evening, his words slicing through the remnants of our shared dreams like a knife. And what about our future? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, as I tried to grasp the reality of his betrayal. There is no R in this future, Lena. I thought you'd understand. It's not personal, it's just the best move for me, he replied, his tone cold and detached. As I sat across from him in the lawyer's office on the day of our divorce, his excitement palpable, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of sorrow and relief. Sorrow for the love I thought we had, and relief that I was finally breaking free from a marriage that had become a prison. I've married into wealth, Lena. My future is secure. Mark boasted, unaware of the irony in his words. I signed the papers, each stroke of my pen a step towards my liberation. Which company? I asked, feigning interest in his new alliance. The one that's about to go public, huge in AI development, he replied, puffing up with pride. Oh, that one, I said, a hint of a smile tugging at my lips. That's my mother's company. The color drained from Mark's face as the realization hit him. He looked at me, then at the lawyer, and back at me, as if trying to find a loophole in the reality that had just unfolded. You're the president's daughter? Yes, Mark. And you've just divorced the only real security you ever had. The room fell silent, the weight of my revelation hanging heavy in the air. Mark's future, once so certain in his eyes, crumbled before him, a castle built on sand. As I walked out of the lawyer's office, the early morning light felt different, brighter, filled with possibilities. I had dreaded this day, yet now that it was here, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't known in years. Mark had chased after a mirage, but I was stepping into a new dawn, unburdened and true to myself. And that was the most shocking conclusion of all. In the weeks following the divorce, the world seemed to shift on its axis. My newfound freedom was both exhilarating and daunting. As I navigated this new chapter of my life, I couldn't help but reflect on the crumbling facade of my marriage with Mark. It was like watching a house of cards fall, each card represented a lie, a disappointment, or a missed connection. I spent my days exploring passions I had set aside for the sake of our relationship. Painting, which I had loved in college, became my refuge, filling my apartment with color and life that mirrored the rebirth of my own spirit. Yet, in the quiet moments, the loneliness crept in, a stark reminder of the void left by Mark's departure. One evening, as I sat at my easel, lost in the swirl of blues and greens on my canvas, a knock at the door jolted me back to reality. Hesitant, I approached, wondering who could be visiting at this hour. Opening the door, I was met with a familiar face, albeit one I hadn't expected to see again so soon. Sarah, Mark's sister, stood before me, her eyes filled with a mix of concern and curiosity. "Lena, I heard about the divorce." "I'm so sorry," she began, her voice tinged with genuine sadness. "Thank you, Sarah. It's been a difficult time, but I'm managing," I replied, unsure of how to navigate this unexpected encounter. "I can't believe Mark would do something like this, to chase after wealth so blindly," Sarah continued, her disappointment in her brother evident. "He always had ambition, but I never thought it would lead him here." We sat down, and as Sarah spoke, the image of Mark I had tried to preserve crumbled further. She painted a picture of a brother who had lost his way, consumed by a hunger for status and recognition that overshadowed everything else, including the people who cared for him. "Mark always admired you, you know. He admired your independence, your spirit. I think it scared him, in a way. He didn't know how to be part of that without losing himself," Sarah confessed, her words offering a glimpse into the insecurities that had driven Mark away. "It's ironic," I mused aloud. "He was so afraid of losing himself that he ended up losing everything that mattered. Including me." Sarah nodded, her expression somber. "I hope he realizes that one day. Before it's too late." As the evening wore on, Sarah and I shared stories, laughter, and even a few tears. It was a bittersweet meeting, a reminder of the connections that had been severed by Mark's actions. After Sarah left, I returned to my canvas, the conversation replaying in my mind. The facade of our marriage had indeed crumbled, but in its place, something more genuine was beginning to take shape. My own path, unencumbered by the weight of Mark's ambitions. The realization that I was better off without the facade was liberating. I had spent so much time trying to fit into Mark's vision of the future that I had lost sight of my own dreams. Now, with each stroke of my brush, I was painting a new future for myself, one filled with possibilities and the freedom to chase my own happiness. The crumbling facade of my marriage with Mark had been a painful chapter, but it was also a necessary one. It forced me to confront the uncomfortable truths about our relationship and, ultimately, about myself. I had been complicit in maintaining the illusion, afraid of what would happen if it fell apart. Now, as I stood alone but unbroken, I realized that the end of our marriage was not the end of my story. It was the beginning of a journey towards self-discovery, a journey that promised to be filled with its own challenges and triumphs. And as the night deepened, the colors on my canvas blending into a symphony of light and shadow, I knew that I was ready to face whatever came next. The facade had crumbled, but in its place, I had found my strength. The day of the divorce loomed like a specter over my thoughts, casting a long shadow that colored even the brightest moments with a tinge of melancholy. As I prepared for the inevitable, a strange sense of calm settled over me. It was as if the storm of emotions that had raged within me for so long had finally exhausted itself, leaving behind a quiet determination to face whatever came next. I arrived at the lawyer's office, the finality of the situation pressing down on me with each step. The office was sterile, the air thick with the scent of legal documents and cold coffee. As I took my seat across from Mark, I couldn't help but notice the smug look of satisfaction on his face. He was like a cat that had caught the canary, oblivious to the fact that the bird was about to fly away. "Good morning, Lena. I trust you're well," Mark began, his voice dripping with a feigned cordiality that made my skin crawl. "I'm as well as can be expected, given the circumstances," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil churning inside me. The lawyer, a middle-aged man with a no-nonsense demeanor, wasted no time in getting down to business. "If both parties are ready, we can begin the proceedings." As the lawyer outlined the terms of the divorce, Mark's eyes gleamed with anticipation. He clearly believed he was walking away with the better deal. Little did he know, the real prize was not the assets we were dividing, but the freedom I was about to reclaim. Before we finalize everything, do you have any questions or concerns? The lawyer asked, looking between Mark and me. Mark, eager to conclude the proceedings, shook his head. No, everything seems in order. I'm ready to move on. It was then that I decided to reveal the truth, the final twist in a tale that Mark had thought he controlled. Actually, I have one question, I said, turning to Mark with a calmness that belied the significance of my next words. Which company did you say your future wife's father owns? Mark, caught off guard, replied with a hint of pride, the one that's about to go public, huge in AI development. Why do you ask? I paused for effect, letting the silence hang in the air for a moment, before delivering the coup de grace. Oh, that one, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. That's my mother's company. The impact of my words was immediate. Mark's face drained of color, his eyes darting from me to the lawyer and back again, as if searching for a sign that this was some kind of joke. But there was no humor in the room, only the dawning realization of the magnitude of his mistake. You're the president's daughter? Mark stammered, his composure crumbling. Yes, I confirmed, signing the last of the documents. And you've just divorced me. The lawyer, sensing the sudden shift in dynamics, cleared his throat uncomfortably. If there's no further business, I'll proceed with filing the paperwork. Mark's reaction was a mix of panic and disbelief. He babbled incoherently about misunderstandings and second chances, but it was too late. The documents were signed, the marriage was over, and with it, his dreams of a secure future built on the fortunes of others. As I walked out of the lawyer's office, the weight of the past few years seemed to lift from my shoulders. I had entered that room a woman shackled by the expectations and manipulations of a man who had valued wealth over love. I left it free, my spirit unburdened by the deceit that had poisoned my marriage. The day of truth, as I would come to call it, was not just about revealing my family's wealth or exposing Mark's shallow ambitions. It was about reclaiming my identity, about standing in my truth and recognizing my own worth. It was a declaration that I was no longer willing to be a pawn in someone else's game, a reminder that real power comes not from the wealth one accumulates but from the integrity and strength of one's character. And as I stepped into the sunlight, the future stretched out before me, filled with endless possibilities. I was ready to embark on a new journey, one where I would no longer hide who I was or what I valued. The day of truth had set me free, and I was eager to see where this newfound freedom would lead me. The fallout from the revelation at the lawyer's office was immediate and far-reaching. Mark's desperate attempts to reconcile were met with a firm resolve on my part. I had closed that chapter of my life and was not about to reopen it, no matter the promises or apologies that came pouring in. The news of our divorce and the circumstances surrounding it spread like wildfire among our social circles. Mark, who had prided himself on his strategic marriage into wealth, became the subject of gossip and ridicule. His carefully constructed facade of a savvy social climber had crumbled, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. I found myself at a cafe with my closest friend, Anna, a week after the divorce was finalized. The warm aroma of coffee did little to mask the tension I felt, discussing the end of my marriage in public for the first time. Lena, I still can't believe it, Anna said, shaking her head in disbelief. The look on Mark's face must have been priceless when you told him about your mom's company. I sighed, stirring my coffee absent-mindedly. It was a moment of truth, Anna. But it's not something I take pleasure in. It's sad, really, how things turned out. Anna reached across the table, squeezing my hand. You did what you had to do, Lena. Mark made his choices, and now he has to live with them. How have you been holding up? I looked up, meeting her concerned gaze. Honestly, it's been a mix of emotions. Relief, mostly. But there's also this underlying sadness for what could have been if things were different. The conversation shifted as Anna asked about my plans for the future. I shared my desire to focus on my career and perhaps travel, something I had put on hold during my marriage. As days turned into weeks, I noticed a shift in my own social standing. Some people, once eager to associate with Mark and me, began to distance themselves, unsure of how to navigate the complex dynamics of our split. Others reached out, offering support and understanding, which I found both surprising and heartening. Mark, on the other hand, struggled to regain his footing. I heard through the grapevine that his relationship with the woman he had left me for had soured once the truth about my family came out. The irony was not lost on me, but I found no joy in his misfortune. If anything, it served as a stark reminder of the fragility of relationships built on anything but genuine connection and respect. One afternoon, as I walked through the park, reflecting on the whirlwind of the past few months, I ran into Mark. He looked worn, a shadow of the confident man I had married. "Lena, can we talk?" he asked, his voice tinged with desperation. I stopped, considering his request. "We can talk, Mark. But understand, nothing you say is going to change the past." He nodded, taking a deep breath. "I know I messed up, Lena. I was blinded by ambition, by the idea of a life I thought I wanted. But losing you, it's made me realize how wrong I was." I listened as Mark spoke, his words a mixture of apology and reflection. It was clear that the fallout from our divorce had been a wake-up call for him, a lesson learned in the hardest way possible. "Mark, I appreciate your apology," I said after a moment. "But I've moved on. I hope you can too, and find happiness in a way that's true to who you are." As we parted ways, I felt a sense of closure. The fallout from our divorce had been painful, a period of upheaval and change. But it had also been transformative, forcing both Mark and me to confront the realities of our choices and the people we had become. For me, the fallout was not just about the end of my marriage, but the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one where I was free to pursue my dreams and build a future on my own terms. And as I walked away from Mark that day, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them with a sense of purpose and a heart open to new possibilities. The weeks following my encounter with Mark were filled with a profound sense of liberation. It was as if the final strings tethering me to a life of pretense and dissatisfaction had been cut, allowing me to embrace my true self without the shadow of someone else's ambitions looming over me. I decided to channel this newfound freedom into rediscovering the passions I had set aside during my marriage. I began writing again, something I had always loved but never pursued seriously due to the demands of my former life. Sitting in front of my laptop, words flowed from me like a dam had been broken, stories and ideas that had been percolating in the back of my mind for years finally taking shape on the screen. One evening, as I was wrapping up a chapter of the novel I had started, a call from my mother disrupted my flow. I hesitated for a moment, knowing that conversations with her often veered into discussions about family expectations and responsibilities. But to my surprise, this call was different. "Lena, darling, how are you?" My mother's voice sounded through the speaker, warm and genuine. "I'm good, Mom. Actually, I've been doing some writing," I replied, a hint of excitement in my voice. "Writing? That's wonderful. You always had a talent for it," she encouraged. "Tell me about what you're working on." I shared the premise of my novel with her, expecting polite interest. Instead, what I received was enthusiastic support and a genuine curiosity about the plot and characters. It was a conversation unlike any we'd had before, one where I felt seen and valued for who I was, not just as the heir to a vast empire, but as Lena, the individual. "Mom, I didn't know you were interested in literature," I said, genuinely surprised. "There's a lot you don't know about me, Lena." "Just like there's a lot I'm learning about you," she replied, her voice softening. "I'm proud of you, not for the wealth or the status, but for seeking your own path. It's what your father and I always wanted for you." Her words struck a chord in me, reinforcing my decision to live authentically. It also dawned on me that liberation wasn't just about freeing oneself from the expectations of others, but also about understanding and embracing the complexities of our relationships. In the days that followed, I threw myself into my writing with renewed vigor, often losing track of time as I explored the depths of my creativity. I also began reconnecting with old friends and making new ones, people who shared my interests and values, rather than those who were merely part of the social circle I had navigated with Mark. One afternoon, while having lunch with a new friend, Jasmine, whom I had met at a writer's workshop, the topic of my recent divorce and the journey I had embarked on came up. "Lena, it's incredible how you've turned a situation that could have broken many people into a stepping stone for your own growth," Jasmine remarked, her admiration clear in her eyes. I smiled, acknowledging the truth in her words. "It hasn't been easy, but I've come to realize that sometimes, you need to go through the storm to appreciate the calm. I found liberation not just in ending a relationship that wasn't right for me, but in rediscovering who I am and what I'm capable of." Jasmine nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It's inspiring, Lena. It reminds me that we all have the power to redefine our lives, no matter the circumstances." As we continued our lunch, discussing everything from literature to life's unpredictable twists, I felt a deep sense of contentment. The path to liberation had been fraught with challenges, but it had led me to a place of self-discovery and empowerment. Liberation, I realized, was not just a moment of breaking free, it was an ongoing journey of becoming more authentically myself, of living a life filled with purpose, passion, and genuine connections. And as I looked forward to the future, I knew that whatever it held, I was ready to meet it head-on, with a heart full of courage and a spirit unbound. The months following my divorce and the subsequent fallout felt like navigating through a dense fog, gradually lifting to reveal the path forward. Liberation had brought with it a sense of peace and self-discovery, but it was the prospect of new beginnings that filled me with a renewed sense of purpose and excitement. I found myself sitting across from my mother in her expansive office, a floor-to-ceiling window offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. The late afternoon sun cast a warm glow over the room, illuminating the soft smile on my mother's face. "Lena, I've watched you navigate these past months with such grace and resilience," she began, her voice both proud and tender. "Your strength through the divorce and your determination to carve out your own path has been inspiring." I felt a warmth spread through me, buoyed by her words. "Thank you, Mom. It's been a journey, but I feel like I'm finally starting to understand who I am and what I want from life." She nodded, leaning forward slightly. "And what is it that you want, Lena? Have you thought about what's next for you?" I took a deep breath, the future I envisioned for myself taking shape in my mind. "I want to make a difference, Mom. I want to use my experiences and the resources we have to help others. I've been thinking about starting a foundation focused on supporting women in technology, offering scholarships, mentorships, and resources to help them succeed." My mother's eyes lit up, her enthusiasm palpable. "That's a wonderful idea, Lena. Your passion for this cause is evident, and I believe you have the vision and drive to make it a reality. How can I support you?" Our conversation evolved into a brainstorming session, ideas bouncing back and forth as we outlined the foundation's mission and the steps needed to bring it to life. It was a moment of connection, not just as mother and daughter, but as two women passionate about making a positive impact in the world. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Meetings with lawyers and financial advisors to set up the foundation, conversations with leaders in the tech industry to garner support, and late nights spent drafting plans and proposals. It was hard work, but every moment felt infused with purpose and potential. One evening, as I sat at my desk surrounded by papers and notes, I received a call from Anna. "Lena, how are you? I've been hearing bits and pieces about your new project, and I'm dying to know more." I smiled, grateful for the interruption and the chance to share my excitement with my friend. "It's really happening, Anna. The foundation is coming together, and I truly believe we can make a difference. It feels like everything I've been through has led me to this point." Anna's voice was warm and supportive. "I'm so proud of you, Lena. You're going to change lives, I just know it. And hey, if you need a volunteer or someone to bounce ideas off, you know where to find me." "Thank you, Anna. That means the world to me," I replied, a sense of gratitude washing over me. "I might just take you up on that offer." As I hung up the phone, I leaned back in my chair, taking in the quiet of the room. The challenges of the past felt like distant echoes, overshadowed by the promise of what lay ahead. Starting the foundation wasn't just a new beginning for me, it was a chance to create new beginnings for others, to empower and uplift in ways I had only dreamed of. In that moment, I realized that the end of my marriage to Mark wasn't just an ending. It was a catalyst, propelling me towards a future where I could use my experiences, both good and bad, to forge a path of impact and meaning. New beginnings weren't just possible, they were unfolding before me, ripe with potential and hope. And as I turned back to my work, energized by the thought of the lives we would touch and the change we would inspire, I knew that this was just the beginning. A new chapter in my life was being written, one where I could be the author of my own story, defined not by my past, but by the possibilities of the future.